The Galactic Council's chamber was vast, its domed ceiling studded with lights that mimicked a star-filled sky. A faint hum resonated through the air, the sound of ancient machinery at work, while the lights shifted subtly, casting dynamic patterns that mirrored the constellations. Delegates from countless species murmured among themselves, their voices a low hum of curiosity and skepticism. At the center of the room stood Gralvek, a towering figure with battle scars etched into his reptilian hide, his eyes burning with a conviction that only years of war could forge. "I speak not as a politician," Gralvek began, his voice deep and resonant, cutting through the chatter, "but as a veteran of the Corinthian Wars. As one who has seen firsthand what humanity is capable of." The murmurs grew louder. Humanity was a relative newcomer to the galactic stage, their small corner of the universe barely charted. To most, they were an anomaly, a death-world species whose unpredictability was both fascinating and terrifying. But to the majority of the Council, they were still an unknown quantity, a minor player in the grand scheme of the Empire's dominion. Gralvek raised a clawed hand, silencing the assembly. "You believe them primitive, fragile. Their biology is unconventional, their methods chaotic. But let me assure you, their soldiers are unlike anything you have faced before. A single species cannot defy the might of the Empire." A delegate from the Viren, a species known for their calculated pragmatism, interjected, his tone dismissive. "Your words are laced with fear, Gralvek. Perhaps your own failures have colored your perception." Gralvek's eyes narrowed, his scaled jaw tightening. "Failures?" he repeated, his voice laced with both anger and sorrow. "We underestimated them. Just as you are doing now." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like a shroud. Gralvek turned his gaze upward as if searching the artificial stars for answers. "Let me tell you of the Battle of Kalis Prime," he continued, his voice softer now, tinged with a haunting reverence. "It was a battle that would forever mark my soul, a moment where our certainty of victory turned to ash. The screams of my fallen comrades still echo in my mind, a reminder of the unrelenting fury we faced. We thought it would be a swift victory. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and unfamiliar with the terrain. Yet they fought with a ferocity that defied logic. They adapted to every strategy we deployed, turning our own tactics against us. And when the dust settled, the fields of Kalis were littered with the wreckage of our arrogance." The delegates listened intently now, their skepticism tempered by the raw emotion in Gralvek's voice. "It was not just their technology or their cunning," he said, his claws clenching into fists. "It was their will. Their refusal to yield even in the face of certain death. They do not fight for conquest or domination. They fight for each other. For their survival. And that makes them unstoppable." A low murmur rippled through the chamber, a mixture of unease and intrigue. One delegate, a lithe insectoid being from the Draxian Collective, leaned forward, her antennae twitching. "And you believe they pose a threat to the Empire?" she asked, her tone skeptical but curious. Gralvek's gaze locked onto hers, unflinching. "I believe they pose a threat to any who underestimate them," he replied. "And if the Empire seeks to bring humanity to its knees, it will not be humanity that falls." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, debates igniting like wildfire. Gralvek stepped back, his piece said as the council deliberated. He knew his warning would likely go unheeded. The Empire's arrogance was as vast as its reach, and humanity was a spark they had yet to comprehend. But Gralvek had seen the fire that spark could ignite, and he carried the scars to prove it. Meanwhile, on the distant frontier of Coalition space, Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, the flagship of Earth's newly formed expeditionary fleet. The sleek vessel hummed with energy, its crew a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh-faced recruits. Carter, a man in his early 40s with piercing blue eyes and a calm demeanor that belied the storms he had weathered, watched as the void of space stretched endlessly before them. He felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing against him, the lives of his crew, the hopes of humanity, and the burden of ensuring their survival against insurmountable odds. "Captain, incoming transmission from Fleet Command," Lieutenant Vega reported, her voice steady despite the tension that hung in the air. "Put it through," Carter ordered, his gaze never leaving the viewport. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Admiral Harper. "Captain Carter," she began, her tone brisk. "Intel suggests the Empire is mobilizing near the Helion Rift. Early reports indicate they've dismissed our forces as insignificant. We need to disabuse them of that notion." Carter's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. "Understood, Admiral. What's our objective?" "Hold the line," Harper replied. Show them what happens when they underestimate Earth. The transmission ended and the bridge fell silent. The crew exchanged tense glances, the gravity of the Admiral's words settling over them like a weight. A nervous murmur rippled through the bridge before fading as Carter stepped forward, his presence commanding their attention. Carter turned to his crew, his expression resolute. You heard the Admiral. Prepare for engagement. Let's remind them why humanity doesn't back down. As the Sovereign and its fleet moved into position, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Carter knew the odds were against them. The Empire's forces were vast, their technology advanced. But humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they had always found a way to endure, to survive, to fight. And as the first Imperial ships emerged from the rift, their sleek, obsidian hulls reflected the faint light of distant stars, their angular designs exuding menace. They moved in a precise, predatory formation, like a pack of hunters closing in for the kill. Carter felt a familiar fire ignite within him, a defiant determination that no empire could extinguish. It was a fire that burned in every human soldier, a fire that no empire could extinguish. All hands, battle stations, he commanded, his voice steady and unwavering. This is our line. And we will hold it. The Imperial fleet loomed closer, their predatory formation cutting through the void like a dagger. The faint hum of their engines vibrated through the void, while their sleek, obsidian hulls seemed to drink in the cold light of distant stars, exuding a predatory menace. On board the Sovereign, the bridge was a hive of activity, every crew member focused, their faces tense but resolute. Captain Ryan Carter stood at the center, his calm presence a stabilizing force amidst the rising tension. Enemy vessels are within weapons range, Lieutenant Vega reported, her fingers flying across the console. They're holding formation, sir. No sign of deviation. Carter nodded. Steady. Let them make the first move. Captain, came the voice of Commander Holt, his tone carrying a note of urgency. We're detecting energy spikes along their forward lines. Looks like they're charging weapons. Carter's eyes narrowed. All right, people, this is it. Shields to maximum. Prepare to return fire on my command. The bridge crew snapped into action, their movements precise and coordinated. The hum of consoles filled the air, punctuated by sharp commands and the occasional nervous murmur, while the faint glow of monitors illuminated the determined faces of the crew. Tension was etched on every face, their determination clear despite the overwhelming odds. The hum of the ship's systems intensified as power was redirected to the shields. Outside, the Imperial fleet's lead ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, searing bolts of light streaking toward the Sovereign and its fleet. Incoming, Vega called out. The ship shuddered as the first impact struck, the shields flaring with bursts of light. Carter gripped the railing, his expression unchanging. Status? Shields holding, Vega replied. Minimal damage to the outer hull. The fleet is maintaining formation. Good. Return fire. Target their lead ships and aim for their formation's weak points, Carter ordered. The Sovereign unleashed its own salvo, coordinated bursts of plasma fire streaking across the void. The other coalition ships followed suit, their weapons lighting up the darkness. The Imperial fleet's sleek ships wove through the assault with practiced precision, but several were struck, their shields flickering before exploding into fragments of glowing debris. Direct hits on multiple targets, Holt reported, his tone steady. They're adjusting their formation, but they're not breaking off. Carter's jaw tightened. They're testing us, pushing to see how we respond. Then let's give them something to think about, Vega said, her tone carrying a hint of defiance. Carter allowed a faint smile. Agreed. Deploy the vanguard. Let's disrupt their lines. The order went out, and a contingent of smaller, faster ships broke from the coalition's main formation, darting toward the Imperial fleet with precision and aggression. Their unexpected maneuver caught the Empire's forces off guard, forcing their larger ships to adjust and expose vulnerabilities. The bridge erupted in a flurry of updates as coalition ships pressed the attack. But the Empire was far from overwhelmed. Their ships adapted quickly, countering with devastating firepower that pushed the coalition's vanguard to its limits. We're taking heavy losses in the forward lines, Holt reported grimly. Carter's expression hardened. Pull them back. Regroup and reinforce our position. Vega, what's the status of the flanking units? In position and awaiting orders, she replied. Good. Have them engage the enemy's rear. We need to split their attention. The flanking units moved swiftly, executing their orders with precision. The Imperial fleet found itself under attack from multiple angles, its lines fracturing as it struggled to respond. For a moment, the tide seemed to turn in the coalition's favor. But then, as if anticipating their strategy, the Empire deployed a countermeasure. From the depths of their formation, a massive flagship emerged, its size dwarfing anything in the coalition fleet. Its hull was adorned with glowing crimson insignias, pulsating with an almost organic rhythm, and its weapon arrays jutted out like the claws of a predatory beast, bristling with energy. A faint aura of shimmering light surrounded it, a visible testament to the strength of its shielding. Its hull was a dark, gleaming alloy that seemed to absorb the surrounding starlight, and its weapons systems bristled with energy. "New contact," Holt said, his voice tight. "It's their command ship." Carter's eyes locked onto the display, his mind racing. "All ships focus fire on that flagship. We can't let it dominate the battlefield." The coalition fleet redirected its efforts, unleashing a concentrated barrage on the Imperial flagship. Flashes of intense plasma fire lit up the void, their impacts igniting the flagship's shields in cascading waves of energy, each ripple shimmering like heat rising off a desert plain. The shields shimmered and crackled under the assault, their brilliance almost blinding against the backdrop of space. The massive ship's shields absorbed the initial assault, their radiant glow pulsing mockingly, as if daring the coalition to try harder. It retaliated with devastating precision, its weapons carving through the coalition's ranks with surgical efficiency. "They're cutting us apart," Vega said, her voice laced with frustration. "We need a new plan." Carter nodded, his mind working furiously. "Signal the fleet to fall back and regroup. We need to draw them into a trap." As the coalition ships began a calculated retreat, Carter turned to Holt. "What do we have in reserve?" "A few heavy bombers and one experimental ship, the Resolute," Holt replied. "But it's untested in combat." Carter's lips pressed into a thin line. "It'll have to do. Get it ready. And patch me through to its captain." Moments later, the holographic display brought up the image of Captain Marin Silva, a stern woman with sharp features and a reputation for unorthodox tactics. "Captain Silva, I'm assigning your ship to spearhead our counterattack. Think you can handle it?" Silva's lips curved into a wry smile. "If it flies, it fights. Just give us the signal." Carter nodded. "You'll have it. Good luck, Captain." The connection ended and Carter turned back to his crew. "This is it, people. We're going to hit them where it hurts. Vega, coordinate the attack. Holt, get me firing solutions for their flagship's weak points. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate us." The Resolute took position at the front of the fleet, its experimental systems coming online with a low, resonant hum. As the coalition forces regrouped, the Imperial flagship pressed forward, its weapons lighting up the void. But this time humanity was ready. The trap was set, and as the battle reached its fever pitch, Carter couldn't help but feel that this was more than just a skirmish. It was humanity's defiance made manifest, a raw and unyielding drive to endure and overcome, no matter the odds. The stakes were monumental, not just for survival but to prove that their determination and ingenuity could match, or surpass, any force in the galaxy. It was a statement. A declaration that humanity would not be broken. And as the Resolute charged into the fray, its weapons blazing, Carter felt a glimmer of hope pierce the darkness. The Resolute surged forward, its sleek hull slicing through the chaos of the battlefield, glowing faintly with the untamed energy of its experimental systems. The untamed energy of its experimental systems radiated through its sleek frame, casting an otherworldly glow that seemed almost alive, as though the ship itself was a living weapon. Behind it, the coalition fleet adjusted its formation, moving to support the daring maneuver. On the bridge of the Sovereign, Captain Carter watched the display intently, every fiber of his being focused on the unfolding gambit. "Captain Silva reports the Resolute is fully operational and engaging the target," Vega relayed, her tone tight with anticipation. "Good," Carter replied, his voice steady. "Relay coordinates to the fleet. We'll give Silva the opening she needs." As the Resolute closed in on the Imperial flagship, the enemy ship responded with a ferocity that shook the battlefield. Beams of searing energy slashed through the darkness like molten knives, each strike trailing a crackling shimmer that lingered in the void, a testament to their destructive power. Yet the Resolute moved with a grace that belied its size, its advanced propulsion systems enabling it to evade or absorb the worst of the assault. "Direct hit to their starboard batteries," Holt reported, his tone tinged with disbelief. "The Resolute is holding steady. They're actually breaking through." Carter allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Of course they are. Humanity's best don't back down." The Imperial flagship, however, was far from defeated. It unleashed a counterattack, deploying swarms of automated drones that swirled around the Resolute like angry hornets. The smaller vessels peppered the experimental ship with coordinated strikes, testing its shields and defenses. Enemy drones closing in, Vega announced. The Resolute is taking heavy fire. Carter's jaw tightened. Signal the fleet. Cover the Resolute. We can't let them get overwhelmed. Coalition ships surged forward, their weapons igniting the darkness with brilliant streaks of plasma and railgun fire, tearing through the drone swarm with ruthless precision. The battlefield erupted into a storm of dazzling light and frenetic motion, with the Resolute at its blazing core, its shields glowing fiercely against the relentless assault. Despite the onslaught, the experimental ship pressed on, its weapon systems carving a path toward the Imperial flagship. Inside the Resolute, Captain Silva's voice rang out with calm authority. Target their power core. Focus all remaining firepower. We're ending this now. The ship's advanced railguns roared to life, their barrels glowing with a searing blue intensity before discharging projectiles that ripped through the void with thunderous impact. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. The Imperial flagship's shields buckled under the relentless barrage, culminating in a massive eruption of fire and debris that sent shards of its armor spiraling into the abyss. Direct hit to their power core, Holt confirmed, his voice rising with excitement. Their shields are down. Cheers erupted across the Sovereign's bridge, but Carter raised a hand, silencing the celebration. Stay focused. The fight isn't over yet. The Imperial flagship, though critically damaged, was not yet defeated. Its remaining weapons fired with a desperate fury, targeting the Coalition fleet in a final vengeful assault. One blast struck a nearby frigate, tearing it apart in a blinding flash of light. Another skimmed the Resolute, causing it to shudder violently. The Resolute is reporting significant damage, Vega said, her voice strained. They've lost primary propulsion but are holding position. Carter's mind raced. Order all ships to concentrate fire on the flagship. We need to finish this. The Coalition fleet unleashed a final, coordinated assault. Plasma bolts, railgun projectiles, and missile salvos converged on the Imperial flagship, overwhelming its battered hull. Explosions rippled across its surface as its internal systems failed one by one. Finally, with a thunderous detonation, the ship split apart, its remnants consumed by the void. A stunned silence fell over the battlefield as the Coalition fleet regrouped, their ships forming a protective perimeter around the damaged Resolute. On the Sovereign's bridge, the tension gave way to a palpable sense of relief. We did it, Vega said softly, her voice tinged with disbelief. Carter nodded, his expression somber. Send recovery teams to the Resolute. And get me a status report on the rest of the fleet. As the bridge crew carried out his orders, Carter turned to the viewport, his gaze fixed on the debris-strewn expanse of space. Victory had come at a steep cost, etched into the fabric of the stars as a defiant reminder of humanity's resolve, a testament to their ability to endure and overcome against insurmountable odds. And in that moment he knew humanity had proven something vital, that their spirit, their ingenuity, and their refusal to yield were forces the galaxy could no longer ignore. But Carter also knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would not take this defeat lightly. And as he stood there watching the stars beyond, he felt the weight of what was still to come. The fight for humanity's place in the galaxy was far from over. The Coalition fleet lingered in the debris-strewn void, a fragile calm settling over the battlefield like a held breath after chaos. Ships moved with grim purpose, tending to the wounded while salvaging vital data from the fragmented wreckage of the Imperial flagship. The faint hum of propulsion systems filled the void, a reminder that while the battle was over, the war was far from finished. On the Sovereign's bridge, Captain Ryan Carter stood resolute, his eyes tracing the faint glow of distant stars as if seeking solace in their cold light. He knew this moment was not just a reprieve but a prelude to something far greater. The crew around him moved with a practiced efficiency, but their faces betrayed the exhaustion and grief that lingered beneath their resolve. Captain Silva and her crew are stable, Vega reported, her voice carrying a note of relief. The Resolute is damaged but their core systems are intact. Recovery teams are en route. Carter nodded, his expression softening slightly. Good. Send my commendations to Silva and her crew. They earned it. The bridge crew worked diligently, their movements fluid despite the weight of the day etched into their faces. Each report and confirmation carried the bittersweet weight of victory, tempered by the unspoken grief for what it had cost them. The loss of ships and lives hung heavy in the air, a sobering reminder of the Empire's power. Incoming transmission, sir, Vega interrupted. It's from the Galactic Council. Carter straightened, signaling for the transmission to be displayed. The holographic interface shimmered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Chancellor Lyrak, the Council's arbiter. His stern visage softened slightly as he took in the battered but determined visage of Carter. "Captain Carter," Lyrak began, his voice resonating with measured authority. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our acknowledgement of your victory. Humanity has proven itself today, not only as a capable force but as a valuable ally." "Thank you, Chancellor," Carter replied, his tone even. "But this victory belongs to all of us. The coalition stood together, and that unity is what prevailed." Lyrak inclined his head. "Indeed. The Empire will not take this defeat lightly. They will regroup and their retaliation will be swift. But today, you have shown the galaxy that their supposed invincibility is an illusion, shattered by courage and unity." The transmission ended and Carter exhaled slowly. He turned to his crew, his voice rising with renewed determination. "We've earned their respect, but the fight isn't over. They'll come back stronger and more relentless. We need to be ready." The crew nodded, their exhaustion giving way to a collective resolve. This battle had united them, forged bonds stronger than any alloy, and Carter knew it was that unity that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. Later, Carter found himself alone in his quarters, the weight of the day pressing down on him. He stared at the datapad on his desk, its screen displaying the names of the fallen. Each name was a life, a story cut short in the name of survival. He whispered a silent promise to honor their sacrifice, to ensure that their loss was not in vain. A soft chime pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called, straightening as the door slid open to reveal Silva. Her uniform was torn in places, and her movements were stiff, but her eyes carried the same fire that had driven the Resolute into the heart of the battle. "Captain," she began, her voice steady despite the fatigue lacing her features. "I just wanted to thank you. For trusting us. For giving us the chance to make a difference." Carter smiled faintly. "It's you who deserve the thanks, Silva. You and your crew turned the tide today. Humanity owes you more than you know." Silva nodded, a hint of pride flickering in her expression. "Then let's make sure it wasn't for nothing. Whatever the Empire throws at us next, we'll be ready." As she left, Carter returned to the viewport, the vast expanse of space stretching out before him. The battle was over, but the war, the fight for survival and sovereignty, was far from finished. Yet in the darkness he saw a glimmer of hope, not just in the stars but in humanity's unyielding spirit. The next day the coalition began the arduous process of rebuilding. Ships damaged in the battle were repaired, their crews working tirelessly despite their fatigue. Messages of solidarity poured in from across the galaxy, species once divided by mistrust now united by a shared cause. The victory at the Hellion Rift became a symbol of defiance, a rallying cry against the Empire's oppression. Carter met with the Coalition's Strategic Council, laying out plans for the next phase of their resistance. Each leader brought their own perspectives and ideas, but it was clear that humanity's ingenuity and courage had earned them a central role in the alliance. Carter listened intently, offering his insights but also ensuring that every voice was heard. "We can't afford to be complacent," he said, his voice steady but firm. "The Empire will strike back and they'll be looking for weaknesses. We need to strengthen our defenses and solidify our alliances. Together we can withstand anything they throw at us." The council members nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and respect. Carter's leadership had not only proven effective in battle but had also inspired a renewed sense of purpose among the coalition's ranks. As the weeks passed, the coalition's efforts began to bear fruit. New ships were constructed, incorporating the lessons learned from the battle. Advanced technologies were shared between species, creating innovations that had the potential to shift the balance of power. Training programs were intensified, ensuring that every soldier and officer was prepared for the challenges ahead. For Captain Carter and the crew of the Sovereign, the path forward remained uncertain, but their resolve never wavered. They knew the Empire would return, more determined than ever to crush the resistance. But they also knew that humanity had proven something vital, that they were not just survivors but warriors, innovators and unyielding defenders of their freedom. One evening as Carter stood on the bridge, Vega approached him, a rare smile gracing her features. "Sir, I think we might actually have a chance," she said, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. Carter turned to her, his own expression softening. "We do, Vega. But it's not just about us. It's about everyone out there who believes in a better future. And as long as we have that, we'll keep fighting." Vega nodded, her confidence bolstered by his words. Together they turned their gaze to the stars, their shared hope shining brighter than any celestial light. The war was far from over, but the coalition had taken its first vital step toward lasting freedom. And in the hearts of those who fought and sacrificed, one truth burned brightly: humanity's spirit was unbreakable.